Renee Westalusk is not present. Nick Panzer?
Present.
West Katzenstein?
Present.
Lyle Fisher?
I'm here.
Judy Decker? Camille Anderson? Tim Carroll? So we don't have Tim and Renee, and I skipped over Pat Quist. Pat submitted her resignation this morning, citing time commitments and rising time commitments, and she's now a great grandmother, as well as it's harvest season, and she thanked the committee for allowing her to serve on the board for as long as she did, and I thanked her profusely for expressing her views and her presence and involvement in a positive vein the whole time on here. So she is suggesting that another person from Small Ag, possibly West Brown Road, submit nominations to the IWVGA board for appointment to replace her position. So with that, we needed a quorum of 5, and we have the quorum. So we have the members, non-voting members. Don Zadiba.
Here.
Tom Bukowskis is still on travel out of town commitment. John Kersey, I know he's on vacation. Lorelei Oviatt, are you available online, Lorelei? Looks like Lorelei Oviatt is.
She indicated last month she's going to be here, so I don't know.
We'll see if she checks in during the meeting. She's not here now. But we do have a quorum. We do have a legal meeting, so let's open with a Pledge of Allegiance. You all stand and face the flag and follow me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'll begin with open public comment for those items that are not on our agenda. Do we have any member of the public that would like to speak on any topic not on the agenda? Audience first. Come to the podium. Young lady.
Do I need to push anything? I hope not.
It's on.
Okay, cool. My name's Regina. Some of you guys know who I am. Some don't. Some of you guys have heard me online for about the last year and a half, making a lot of noise. I tend to be the loudest one in the room, and I'm okay with that. I'm a resident of Trona, and there were a couple of members of this committee who had some questions regarding cereals, Trona in particular. And although Camille is here and can definitely answer some of your questions, I find it to be a little bit heart-wrenching being a resident out there. I've lived here since right before you guys were actually disbanded temporarily over the 20 months. And just by asking very simple questions of SVM, of the water district where I live at, of the GA, of my county supervisors, I was able to gather the information for all of the questions that you guys presented at the last GA meeting as public citizens. Cereals does have a water source. We know that. It sits on a decently large basin. It's also extremely brackish. It'll kill you. There's a reason the 49ers did not drink out of it when they came from Death Valley. I haven't been out here for all my life. I moved here about 3 years ago. So to have members who've lived in this community their entire lives make assumptions about my town is not okay anymore. And I've said it once and I'll say it again. Please stop. If you have questions, ask. The GA isn't always going to answer that. We all know that. Even this committee and your members knows that. You're not always going to get an answer at the board meeting, but you can certainly get an answer offline or by sending an email just like I did. All of the infrastructure out in Cereals is owned by SVM. It is. That's a fact. There's only a handful of things that that water district actually owns. So when it comes to committee members, and that's why I decided to come and address you guys instead of at a general GA meeting, when it comes to you guys not quite understanding that, and even the water manager now didn't understand that after his tour, and that's okay. Just ask. Please stop assuming. Cyril's can't filter that water. It's extremely, extremely expensive. Trona doesn't have the infrastructure for that anymore. We also don't have the population density to support all of that infrastructure we already have without Cyril's Valley. If they're not there, our water treatment plant goes down, which means we can't pump the water in. We don't own the pipelines. We don't own the tanks. We own nothing. And unfortunately, there's not enough money there to buy that all back from that company if the company would even sell it. Because there's no guarantee. We all know how corporations work. They don't have to sell a thing. The state could try and force that, but that's never going to happen. So please keep that in mind. I understand in the past there was nobody to really speak for Trona, but I'm definitely here now. And I have no issue, standing in front of you guys, as terrified as I am, to address everybody and represent that community, because for far too long, both on this committee and on that Groundwater Authority, we have gone unheard. Nobody wants to hear from them, because why does Trona even matter? You got to remember, Trona was here first, and we may very well be here long after Ridgecrest. We all want growth. I think I overheard some conversations earlier. Everybody wants growth. We understand that. We don't want the base to go. We don't want the housing developments to end. We don't want the construction to end on some of these newer shopping center thingies. All of that's a good thing. I am from a small town in Northern California. I know what a water war looks like. And this one is far worse than the one that I dealt with up there. And my hometown has 3 lakes that are almost dry. I'm not new to this. This is not new at all. None of this is new information. Many parts of the state have gone through this before. But what we see over and over and over again, and I know you guys are going to address it later, has to do with public communication, but it has to come from you guys as well. So please just be informed. If you have questions, ask a resident, ask SVM, ask the county. Tim and I will answer your question, and if he doesn't know, he'll definitely ask somebody who does know. So thank you guys so much, and I appreciate it.
Can you state your name again, please, so I get it?
Yeah, it's Regina, Regina.
Last name?
Troglin.
Spell that, please.
T as in Tom, Roglin.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Any other public comment from the room? Any public comment online? Thank you. Seeing none, we'll go to the next subject, approve the PAC report, actually the minutes version of it, of the August PAC meeting that we sent out. Everybody has a copy of that. Do you see any need to make changes or adjustments?
Yes, I do. At the August meeting, both Nick Panzer and myself submitted written comments. They should be part of the minutes for the August meeting.
Did you submit them to April?
I submitted them to you.
Okay, I'll have to resurrect that. Written comments for you and
Nick. Mr. Panzer.
and I'll see that they're added and referenced.
Thank you. Also make sure I have some written comments for tonight, and I would like you to make sure that they're added to the minutes and the report for this meeting.
Okay. Any other additions or changes?
Mr. Chair, item 4B, I would just bring to your attention the spelling for Director Itnyer is incorrect. Itnyre.
Say that again.
Itnyer, Itnyre.
And why? There's only one E, and it's
Yes.
the last.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much, because I was unsure on how to spell it, and nobody corrected me. Okay, with those two corrections to be input by me in the minutes, do we have a motion to approve?
I'll make the motion, yes, to approve with the proper corrections in there to make it complete.
Okay, and do we have a
I second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing no noes, were there any abstentions or recusals? None noted. Motion passes unanimously. Okay. On to item number 5, review and recommend changes to the public communication and engagement plan. I expect this one to be a lengthy subject as we're just getting our teeth into it. So we'll open with board member comments. I thought we could be all over the chart on this, and to hopefully focus our efforts, maybe we talk first about structurally, do we think there are things in it that should be added, subtracted, modified based on additional information? The document is over 3 years old now, and keeping that in mind, let's consider first, do we want to open it for structural changes in the format and individual additions? And then secondly, I thought perhaps we would then focus on particular items of concern and emphasis, strategic communications, vectors, such as the areas mentioned by Nick and I think West at our last meeting. And so I think that's a way to attack it. First, do we believe that the document needs any structural updates based on the time that has passed?
Chairman, I'd be happy to start that dialogue.
Sure.
Basically, I like the document the way it is. I have two, for me at least, important additions. I just want to extend 2 sentences. And let me go to
So you want to open it? You do want to open the document structurally?
Yeah.
Okay.
That was your first option, right?
Yeah, we had.
Well, unless someone else wants.
No. I just.
Yeah, no, that's all I'm doing at this
you're
point.
You're proposing 2 changes.
2 additions, yeah, that's all. Yeah, because but first and most importantly, I like the document. I don't think it needs much, and I don't think it warrants a whole lot of our time, as my personal opinion. Okay, so on page 5, down under communication objectives, the 3rd bullet from the bottom begins, respond to public concerns. I'll wait till you all get there. Bottom of page 5, 3rd bullet from the bottom. Respond to public concerns and provide accurate and up-to-date information, comma, and this is what I would add this phrase, including monthly financial statements in accord with generally accepted accounting principles, broken out by fund. Okay. So it's clear, at least from my perspective, that public concerns are not being addressed on this, certainly not mine. Certainly, Director Rotora on the GA has expressed concerns over and over about this, and it keeps coming up. I understand software is on the way. But that's one. And the next page 6 at the top, the second, which is the last bullet, clear explanations of how the plan could affect all uses and users of groundwater in the basin, comma, especially ratepayers who lack accountants and lawyers to help them with this, period. I will have more to say on that later after you get through what you've referred to as the structural thing. That's it, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Do we have any other suggestions?
Well, I a little different take. I looked through it. I've read through it, and I feel that, yeah, it was done 3 years ago. Sure, it needs some updates. It could. There's some political stuff in the back that needs to be updated. That could be, but we shouldn't be spending our time. And I think Stetson Engineers doesn't need to spend time on it because this is going to cost a bunch of their time. Funding is the big issue. Why? We kind of don't need to do that, I don't believe. I think we ought to just leave it as it is. I think because it hasn't been, as far as I'm concerned, it hasn't been used from what I've seen. Okay? Now, what I would suggest that we go through, and that thing that we just got that from up north, there's some things in there that we could probably do, but I think we need to go to the board with strongly worded recommendations on what they have to do, what they need to do. We can't say have to, but give them, another workshop. I don't know, but there are obviously people here in the valley. Another one popped up at the last board meeting. You remember that one, right? Okay. I spoke with him briefly just before that meeting. He's a water district customer. He's lived here since the 1960s. And he had never heard of the GA, GSP, Sigma, nothing. Totally cold. I said, you read the papers? No, I don't read any of the papers. I went, okay. I wanted to ask him where he's been living, but anyhow, that wasn't appropriate. So the word isn't out. And I don't know, flyer in your water bill, that's costly, and people will pull it out and throw it in the trash, pay their water bill maybe. So, I don't know. But I think we need to go back to the board with just strong worded recommendations of what they must do or what they really need to do to try and get word out. And I had that conversation last month on domestic well owner. Okay, I live where I do for a reason, leave me alone kind of thing. And there's a lot of people in town that feel that way also. We don't have a water problem here. Every time I turn the tap on, water flows. We don't have a problem. So we need to brainstorm and come up with ideas of things that maybe we can do and send very strongly worded recommendations to the board. Okay?
So
that's the way I feel.
You're referring to not structural, as I called it, changes to the board, but content and areas to focus on, much like what Nick talked about. That would be our strongly worded letter about recommendations.
Yeah.
And I think that's appropriate for that portion of the document. Are there other folks that would propose some structural changes or the need for them given 3 years since it was produced?
Yes. Well, I don't know if you'd call it a structural change. I propose, and I have it written in here, in addition to the recommendations that are in the original plan, and I will second what Lyle said about I do not think the board has followed through with the recommendation in the original plan. They had 2 workshops with domestic well owners that neither one went very well. The first was heavily attended, and if you were there, you would notice there were many police out in the hall. The second one was poorly attended. I believe it might be valuable for us to make the recommendation to the board that a requirement of this be perhaps a monthly column. I know I read Mr. Zadiba's columns when he puts them in the paper about, he has in the past put them about the Groundwater Authority, but he also puts them in there about the Indian Wells Valley Water District. And I presume the person to do this might be the new general manager, Carol. But start at the beginning. There are so many people, as Lyle mentioned, that they don't know what's going on. And so then they jump into the middle of it when it starts to cost them dollars. And so maybe we need to go back and write a history. Once a month, write a history of how we got to where we are today with Sigma, why we have it, what the groundwater condition of the basin is, and so on, and take it from there. It needs to be written in simple language so that all can understand it. but that is my recommendation that we add that. I noted that in reading through the document that at least 3 or 4 times in the document it states that the board should have evening meetings so all can attend. And I know this is a subject that has been brought up many times by the public in coming to the Groundwater Authority meetings. And perhaps we need to stress that part of it. I have some other things that I think we need to do. I don't think they're part of the communication plan, however. I do like what Nick proposed, discussing finances. That needs to be part of a monthly column as well. That's all.
West, you were...
Yeah, a couple comments. I came in here with the point of view that we should not mess with this document or we're going to get ourselves wrapped around the axle. I would modify the financial statement. I would add to the one that Nick added by saying that it should also be based on the POAM, the major tasks in the POAM. The financial statement should, and we're liable to get off wordsmithing that. I guess there's a question in my mind, any strongly worded message we want to take, does that have to be part of this document, or should that be kind of the other tasks you outlined in your...
No, it can be a separate... The PAC has the authority to issue a separate report on a subject that we've been working on, for example, the communications and engagement plan that provides emphasis in a specific area. And that could be in not these structural areas, perhaps, but in the focus of the message that we want to emphasize, that they deliver message that they engage with the public on.
That's kind of where I was at preparing for this meeting, is let's not mess with this document. I can't disagree with what's been proposed, but my thought was let's go ahead and talk about what specific actions we would recommend to the GA. Let's discuss that first, and if that leads us into modifying this document, then let's modify it at that time. But I was going to suggest let's not address this document unless we find we have to, based on what I think what others have said here. The most important thing is to kind of help the GA make such suggestions that might help them solve some of the problems that, for example, Judy just outlined, and Lyle, for certainly.
I agree with what you're saying. I hadn't thought of it that way. Let's not mess with a document unless we have to. Okay?
That was my thought.
Let's figure out what we think that the GA needs, that they really need to do, and give them some strongly worded, if you will, again, guidance or whatever on what we think they should be doing to get the word out to the public, because it's very apparent. I've said it, in front of many times now, in front of the board, that the word isn't getting out. Obviously, people are coming in here and speaking, and they have no idea in the world what they're talking about. So,
I would like to make a comment along with West. One of the items on my document to discuss separately is a POAM. I believe that is, if you're going to talk about what's most critical, I do believe that a POAM or something, Microsoft, whatever the software program is called, is essential, and it's essential now. It was essential 6 months ago. And it's something that Mr. Vittora brings up every month. He's the only one that does. I don't know that the board can say to the public how much money they've taken in this year, how much money they've spent, where they've spent the money. They don't know. We don't know as the public what their plan is. We were very focused when we had to produce the groundwater sustainability plan. We had a deadline, we had certain requirements that went into it, and everybody was very focused on getting that done. And somehow the focus has gotten blurry, and we need to get back on track. And I agree with
schedule
Nick.
this-
I agree with Nick, and I agree with West, and I agree with Lyle.
Thank you, Judy. The schedule, POAM, and POAM isn't the right word for the situation we're in now. POAM is for a specific deliverable item that is large and complex and has a lot of interactive features. A schedule that might include sub-POAMs for that exact description is being worked on by staff. They're putting together some things that they already have, basically related to Stetson's operations, the actions inside the staff level of the GA, and perhaps a litigation schedule only. Schedule, because they're not going to, you can't predict litigation, and they're not going to obviously disclose any strategy in a paper. So we reported out of our meeting a good lengthy discussion we had on schedules and POAM-like items at the last meeting, and they took that on board, and action is being taken. And I expect at the next PAC meeting we'll have something to look at and then comment on the efficacy of that, particularly from a public communications perspective and usefulness for us, the public, and the GA staff.
Well, one thing that I found alarming, actually, at the last GA meeting was to see on the agenda the fact that, for instance, the water recycle program was charged to the replenishment fee fund. If I recall correctly, when the replenishment fee was discussed, a public hearing was held, and before it was adopted, it was stated repeatedly that the replenishment fee would be for imported water. And in my view anyway, the only charge to the replenishment fee at this point should be the charges accrued by Capital Corps when they work on imported water and all the details that go along with that. Otherwise, you have this large fund. The Water District has paid $500,000 already. Is that correct?
Can we stay on topic? Can we get back to the
All right.
the communications plan? And right now we're talking the structural pieces prior to going into what we all seem to want in the meat of it. So are there any other comments on the, Renee, you have one?
Yeah. I don't know if you can hear me. Can you hear me? Okay, my biggest thing is we have to change the list of government, federal government officials. It's outdated, and the district numbers will change because we're in redistricting. And I just found out today that the final maps for redistricting have to be drawn by December 27th. So we should know the new district numbers by then. But right now, where it says federal government, the 23rd congressional district might be a different number, okay? And the 8th congressional district, okay? And right now, we have Paul Cook's name listed there. He's retired, and we now have Jay Obernolte is in that congressional seat. The also thing is, I don't understand, we have 2 U.S. senators, and for some reason, one senator has been left off permanently, and I don't know why. Okay, that senator needs to be added on their U.S. senator, and we have a new U.S. senator replacing Senator Kamala Harris. So that needs to be updated. And my other comment is we may need to add more outreach methods and notification, because there's constantly new electronics being created. You know, and I'm just wondering if we should look at the outreach methods, if there's additional outreach methods that we missed the first time, and also look into more electronic notification of constituents.
Thank you, Renee. I'll also add to that the assembly districts and the state senate districts are going to change. We know that. out of that. So these are the types of things that I thought need to be updated. The document is 3 years old, so we can update that. But Camille or Ed, did you have additional suggestions around this part of the topic?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I actually agree with Lyle that the document itself should not be changed. However, I agree with Renee that we should obviously update all of those things that are out of date, people's names, congressional districts, that sort of thing. Other than that, I think that most of the concern can be addressed by how you interpret the document without necessarily have to changing it itself. So I agree with both Lyle and Renee on that.
Okay. Ed?
Yes, I think that it was a good thing that we did at the beginning, and the big problem was it never got instituted very well by the GA. So whatever you can do as a group, you can do as a group to try to get the GA to have more public outreach, I'm all for it. I can't hear you. Oh, yeah. Okay. Anything that we can do to help the GA actually institute an outreach program like we talked at the beginning of making that document, I think is the hard problem.
Okay. Thank you, Ed. And just to go back for everybody's benefit, these microphones have an axial flat face, so you have to speak directly in line with them. If you get offline, it doesn't pick it up. So that's the issue, and everybody in this chamber, for various reasons, has to struggle with that until they train themselves to turn and look and keep projecting into the axis of the microphone.
Mr. Chairman, in addition to that, Eddie, this is for you. These microphones move real easy, and I can see you're having to lean far forward. You don't need to. Just pull. There you go. Pull it up as close as you want, and get it so you don't have to. Get
Okay, I understand. Microphone 101.
Yeah, that's not as obvious as it seems because the old microphones were fixed. So we were trained on those, and we haven't untrained ourselves. So that's good. Well, it seems like there are some minor changes that we wouldn't call structural, but they need to be made. So as a portion of this, I think a lot of the ones that we heard should be considered and modified, but let's move on to the big issue of the substance of the communication and emphasis areas and take that. Don, I didn't ask you and that's my oversight on the structural one. I'll let you speak before we go to the other one.
Okay. You talked about updating, and I think just to bring your attention, one update that we want to make sure that we hit is on the introduction where it classifies the basin as medium priority when it's actually high priority. I think everybody knows that.
I can't believe we didn't catch that the first time. Interesting. Okay, thank you.
I think when this document was done, it was still classified as a medium priority.
No, this document's April of 2019 or 2018, and it was well before that it was high priority.
Yeah.
So that's just an oversight.
I might be getting into your next topic, but if I am, you can shut me down.
No, you'll just be the first to start in on the next topic.
All right. I just wanted to, I think everybody got the email, but today I received the draft of the Owens Valley Groundwater Sustainability Plan, and one of the attachments to that was a communications plan. Hopefully you got it. I know it's 37 pages. You probably haven't read it, but I would suggest, everybody's talking about the current one that we have, just leaving it as it is, but I might suggest that we look at that one at least and see if there is anything in there that we feel that we could incorporate into our plan as well. So again, I apologize for the short notice, but I got it I think at 1:30. I immediately let Dave know before I even got a chance to read it. So I thought it was important enough to get it out.
Thank you, Don. And when I sent that out, I made note of that. Obviously, it was received late, but I thought there were some interesting things in there that could help our plan. And even that plan, you saw, had a revision to it that took out some of these things that I call structural, that is worth considering in updating the plan, much like each of the items we talked about here. But again, it seems the group is, the committee is aligned behind wanting to get to the important messages within this that we think need to be emphasized. And with that, this whole general topic is on updating the recommend changes to the communication and engagement plan, and we'll move it. We'll take public comment at the end on both subtopics, but let's move into the what obviously has a lot more energy behind it. And who wants to be the first to talk on that?
Well, I'll talk some. I forgot to mention that if it's decided that a monthly column should be created, I mentioned the newspapers. It also ought to go on our website. I am not a social media user, so I am not going to comment on it other than to say from appearances of what I've read about social media, it appears to be the world's largest gossip column. However, it is a way to get the word out to a lot of people. So, for instance, if the board should have a special meeting, or the PAC or the TAC should have a special meeting, it could be put on Facebook, so the word got out quickly. However, someone in the GA staff or the GA board, not the consultant, is going to have to take on the job of organizing and relaying communications. I think that's one of the problems.
Comments on the messaging?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I was going to suggest that it seemed like a number of us have prepared statements. We kind of put together our own offerings, and I was going to suggest that we open the floor temporarily, successively to each of us, successively, I mean, and let us kind of make our statements, and maybe, you know, like Judy might make her full statement if she would like, and then as long on that particular topic, and we could work our way down the board here, and then we would, instead of sort of discussing a little bit of Judy's and a little bit of Lyle's and a little bit of Nick's and a little bit of mine, maybe just work our way down the board and get our ideas on the table.
Okay, since you have the mic, why don't we start with yours?
Be glad to do it. And so I have a one-page document here, and what I would like to do is basically just read the content of it as quickly as I can. And a little background, I noted it's generally agreed that the C&E with stakeholders has not been fully successful despite several concerted and focused efforts to make it so. This shortfall is evidenced by the misinformation that is propagated, the uninformed comments at GA meetings by motivated and well-meaning stakeholders, and the limited number of stakeholders that show up at the meetings, the GA meetings. So we do have a problem. I think it's been a good effort. And I think the following actions are needed to improve C&E. First of all, to make specific recommendations to the GA regarding C&E activities, and that's what I think we've adopted as the focus today. Then, after we've done that, Dave, you asked the GA to identify any improvements they would like to see in the C&A plan. So if those come in, after we've made our recommendations and GA recommendations come in, then we're in a position to update the C&E plan if it's needed. And then I wanted to move on then to the first item there, which is to make specific recommendations to C&E activities. And after some thought, I came up with this scheme. Basically, C&E is a three-step process. The first process is to alert the stakeholder, and I'll give a little more detail in a second, Once stakeholders are alerted, and that's the real problem we've had, is getting them alerted, then any stakeholders that are directly impacted will then become proactive. And finally, the impacted, any proactive stakeholders then will actively seek the C&E information. And so, for example, alerting the stakeholder, I think it's safe to say that most citizens, most users of the water district have been alerted. They're aware now this is happening. But that's not true for the most domestic well owners, that they've been alerted, and we've tried. The GA has tried, and it's not true that, for example, folks that own blocks of raw land in the desert have been alerted. And so the challenge has been how to alert folks, how to alert the stakeholders. And when you think about it, today's newspapers and the internet and social media and television and radio, it's all very fractured. There's not one place you can go to get the word out. It's fractured, and it's not very good for what I'm calling broadcasting, getting the word out. And we've discovered that. I'm going to call it also information push. The current state of affairs is just not well suited for pushing information. We have this problem for the TV booster. And the GA has already executed several significant efforts to alert stakeholders to its activities. Once that's happened, or if it does happen, then any stakeholder who is directly impacted are going to become proactive if they're going to do it at all. And you made a very important statement, I think, David, in the last GA meeting and the last meeting here, and that is, it is an essential responsibility of a citizen to become involved. And so we have to roll some responsibility towards the citizens to step up. And so I think it's safe to say that the water district customers, agriculture interests, and industrial interests have been impacted and are proactively involved. There's no doubt about that. Agriculture is involved, Toronto is involved, and a number of more and more water district customers are showing up. The folks who are involved are, once again, domestic well owners and owners of raw land. But I suspect that the ongoing legal actions are going to alert those folks if they all get notified, as we expect they will, and then perhaps they will become more active if they're going to. And then finally, once a stakeholder is actively seeking information, then that's where today's media really serves us well. Because you can do a search into the internet or into Facebook and find what you want to find, by and large. So today's media serves us well if you're doing information pull. If you're trying to find something out, do a search on it. And what we're finding, however, that there's a lot of misinformation out there. And half-truths. It's kind of interesting, the LA Times article today didn't have it right about the approach the GA's taking. So, and that's where I think that we can do the most good right now. And the words I used is the GA must provide the high ground in this rowdy environment. When people go and search, the GA needs to pop up, and it needs to have the introductory material and the detailed material that a person who wants to become informed is looking for. So I'm getting close to the end here, guys. So the specific recommendations that I would propose come out of this today for the GA is, first of all, that the GA modify the website so that if you do a search, if you're doing an information poll, that sucker pops up. It's not, and that's true if you're doing a search online, Facebook, Instagram, any search you do related to groundwater in the IWV basin, let's be sure that the GA website pops up. Second thing I would recommend is let's modify that website so it has what I called a prominent inviting entry portal. So if a person's doing a search, they might find something they can click on that might be called groundwater management in the Indian Wells Valley groundwater basin, or something like that, where that person can click on that and he's on his way to finding out what he needs to find. right now, we can go find what we want. We can find the minutes. I can watch the videos of the last GA meeting, and it's there, and I know how to find it. But let's have an inviting entry portal. And finally, inside this portal, once you're in there, let's address the following topics. First of all, there needs to be a concise and complete overview of SGMA and our approach to sustainability. That's what, for example, the LA Times got wrong. They just didn't have it right. And of course, we know, if you were to ask me, one of my friends asked me, I know what the approach is, but it's my pulling together a lot of information and mandates that are currently distributed across a bunch of documents that have come out of the Groundwater Authority. I could tell you my assessment of how we've chosen to allocate the $76.50, why some folks are asked to pay the fee and others aren't. I can tell you the logic. Whether it stands or not remains to be seen. So let's be sure that someone who goes on the website has a concise and complete overview of SGMA, and they can get their arms around it, SGMA and what we're doing. And then within that concise and complete overview, let's provide links to the detailed information that already exists, either on the GA website or elsewhere, for example, at the state or wherever you might look for it. Finally, let's have a frequently asked questions section in that modified GA web portal, an FAQ that will address questions that we might suggest, and also in particular address misinformation that's out there. So if someone asks, is there an underground river? No, there's not, okay? Let's have the question out there as in the FAQ.
That we know of.
Right.
There are still some people that hope it's out there.
Right. Well, I hope it's there myself, but I'm not holding my breath. So it would be nice if we were surprised. And there might also be like a contact us section at the bottom where a person might pose question and answers. Two more quick points. I think the GA should provide printed alternatives for any stakeholders who do not use electronic communication services. I don't know how you get the word to those folks. That's tough. And finally, the GA should be prepared to continue public meetings if public interest justifies it, or to satisfy information pulled from citizens who do not use social media or the web. So those are the comments I wanted to make. I think we've come a long way in alerting the stakeholders. The ones that aren't alerted will probably be alerted by the legal process we're going through. And I think now the most important thing we can do is have the GA do what it has to be sure the website provides that portal of good information. It's easily accessible. Okay, I'll shut up.
Thank you, West. Next one I had was Nick. Would you like to go through yours?
Thank you, Chairman. I'm looking at the C&E plan, the executive summary communication. Each stakeholder must have an opportunity to understand the magnitude of the groundwater overdraft problem and how that problem could affect the stakeholder. I think, and I think West just said that somewhere in his comments, that I think the GA has done a good job overall with one exception. All of the major pumpers have been at every meeting with their lawyers, their consultants. They've participated actively in PAC and TAC and GA. They know the score. Lots of us, probably everybody, dislikes the plan in some aspect or another. We would all have it be different. But we've been well represented with one exception. And I believe that happens to be my constituents, which are residential ratepayers. They do not have lawyers. They do not have accountants. They get a lot of misinformation, as we have been talking about. We hear it at all of these meetings. They'll get up and make statements that are clearly off the wall. They do not understand the plan. Flipping ahead to page 5, at the last bullet, it says, giving stakeholders an opportunity to understand the quantitative details of the imbalance between current groundwater recharge and groundwater uses.
Nick, excuse me. I only have 3 pages in your handout.
I'm just going by the numbers, type numbers at the bottom of the page of the communication and engagement plan.
Of the communication plan, so
Yeah.
you're not reading
No,
off
I'm not in my document.
Okay, you're on the
Yeah,
communication
I'm just
plan.
giving you the background.
Thank you.
Okay. So I don't believe that that has been done in the case of residential ratepayers. They don't know what to expect, the range of possibilities, if this plan is fully implemented. The GSP is 304 pages long, not counting appendixes, which add 700 plus pages. There's over 1,000 pages in this document. This is of little to no use to my typical residential customer. They wouldn't know where to begin. It is so complex and so deep. However, I believe that those 1,000 pages, in my personal opinion, can be reduced usefully to a single page. And now I will take you to my handout that's waiting for you. I'm not going to walk you through that page. I arranged with Dave ahead of time that I would not do that unless invited to do so, because it will take some time for reflection. The third page, if you look ahead, will turn off almost just about everybody, but very few people will care about the details of how I compute what the likely increase in the cost is for your typical residential ratepayer. So the focus is on the second page of this, and I would commend it to your consideration when you have time to reflect on it. But here is the goal of the piece, and this is covered in the transmittal letter. To help address, and I'll read, to help address this communication gap between Water District residential customers and others, I've recommended a one-page handout along the lines of the attached chart be made available at all GA-sponsored public forums. That would include GA meetings, PAC meetings, any workshops, anywhere that's a GA-sponsored function, maybe a GA director speaking to the Chamber of Commerce. Okay, the chart intends to depict overdraft problem at a glance. And I mean that literally. It's a depiction. Okay? It's trying to make 390 words cover 10,000 words. So if you look at it, and I'm not directing you there right now, you'll see that the problem is very obvious. We're pumping 4 times what we have as recharge. It depicts the solution in the same way. Very simply, it shows how we get from, how the plan gets from 29,000 down to 7650. It discloses the potential costs to the average, and I understand that average is a concept. I have to make certain assumptions in coming up with the numbers that you'll see in the explanation of that chart. But it offers context for fielding questions about the GSP and focus public input on suggestions for improving the GSP. So the concept would be simple. At a GA meeting or a meeting like this, there would be some of these in the front table, and in responding to questions from the dais or the chair, if someone says something that's clearly off base, that they're clearly not informed, they might be referred to that document, which niftily summarizes in a very general, high-level way what the plan is all about. I'm a stickler for brevity and clarity, and I really believe that if that document is more than 1 page, you're going to start losing people. And every page you add, as I point out here, you're going to lose half. Every complexity you add. Because we could work this thing right back up to the 1,000 pages that constitute the GSP if you did that. So that's why I have done my best to try to get the picture, the depiction on a single page. And for those that are really interested in how I calculated what the average residential ratepayer would be paying by way of an annual increase, they could go to the last page if they're a glutton for the numbers and want to look at it. And the thought was that if PAC, there's a consensus, and they agreed that the concept is worth pursuing, that maybe we should do that and massage it and formalize it as a recommendation that they do just as I suggest here. Have these available so they can be referred to from the dais. It's also a good memory jogger. I might add that the paragraph on the chart itself answers just a multitude of questions. It talks about lawsuits without revealing what they are, just as an example, and explains their inevitability. This is California, this is water, there will be lawsuits. That was always a given. People need to understand that. It's a part of the process. I think I'll stop there. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Nick. I think there's some good suggestions in there. I would add, you are one of the two representatives for the water district users, metropolitan users per se, and some of what you stated, and you said it is applicable to others, and it's also from your first comment of the night. The water district customers, of which I am one, by the way, aren't the only ones that don't have lawyers and accountants. And so I would say, a good value to this approach as proposed is to do it for each of them. And, specific the domestic users, the small ag users, all those folks that don't fall in the members of some of the large ag. The water district itself, which has legal counsel, et cetera, that don't have access to that, and it would be a benefit to them to have the same thing from their perspective, and I think that's what you were saying, but I just wanted to point out it's not the water district customers only. Okay, and the next one I have is Judy's.
Well, I don't have a whole lot to add from what I've already said, except I neglected to say about writing. Oh, I'm not talking into this thing. I don't have a whole lot to say from what I already have stated, except the idea of writing a monthly column, which could work for the things that West brought up, is it should be posted on the website as well as in the newspapers. I am really concerned about the fact that the GA board didn't take advantage of what was written in the public engagement plan when it was written, and they haven't taken advantage of it recently. I stated this at the last PAC meeting. I think the meetings are too formal. It's true they have an agenda to get through and other business with their other positions to do, but you don't get people to engage in conversations with you to find out things by having timers, by telling them they're done, by sitting up here on the dais in a suit, in a tie, in a shirt, and being very formal. I'll give you an example. My husband Don and I attended the last water district meeting. It was crowded because there were a lot of people who had a lot of things to say. But the board sat there in their sports shirts and were relaxed, and so was the manager. The only person with a suit and a tie was, but naturally, their legal counsel. And the whole atmosphere is a little different. I agree with what previous speakers tonight have said. While we are water district customers, we are also domestic well owners, de minimis users. And many of the people who went out and bought parcels of land say 40 years ago, built a house, drilled a well, or have a co-op well, have died or moved away, and there are new people in those homes. And personally, we have approached some of those people, and they have basically told us to get out. They are not interested. Now, as has been stated, with the comprehensive adjudication, they will be getting a notice as a property owner, and that should pique their attention, but we don't know that. And I think this is a big concern as to how to get people involved in their own community, never mind what their citizenship responsibility is, because it's obvious that there are thousands, if not millions, of people who are ignoring that part of it. And so I would say that we need to strongly encourage the GA to take what they have right now and start to use it. Maybe they could have every other meeting as a night meeting. Maybe they would get more people. As you can see, the room is bursting with people tonight for us. However, there was only 24-hour notice that we were actually having a meeting. And so the board meetings are 72-hour notice. Ours should be too. And perhaps some money should be spent advertising those meetings in newspapers and on social media and on websites. And if they have a public meeting at night, perhaps more people will come. We need to get the public involved. But the board needs to do it. It's the GA board's responsibility to reach out to the public. We can help, and the TAC can help, what's left of them, but it's their responsibility.
Thank you, Judy. And I'll address the notification for this meeting. There were some staff hiccups and miscommunications.
I understand that.
I'm sorry?
I know that.
There were some, well, you don't know all of it, but there were staff miscommunications. There were folks out of town, and there was an expectation that I made that was not realized, so some of this blame goes to me. But they are growing pains of getting us restarted with some new folks involved from when we last did this 20 months ago. And so this one had to be a special meeting based on those factors, most notably late notification for an out-of-town traveler. So that one's on me, and in the future we will certainly try to get them out way ahead of time, and as well as the documents that support them. The document in particular that we're talking tonight has been up on the GA website since April of 2018. So, point taken, Judy. Are there other written inputs from anyone on the board or on the committee? Okay. Are there other comments?
I will jump in there.
Yes, please.
Okay. I've heard some cool. I don't think I am. I've heard some cool comments that I like. I like Nick's one-page thing with the whole thing. Sigma law. It can be, going to have to be condensed, but I think it can be done. Complete with the law, the problem, the GSP, what's going to be done, what has to be done, or what we're doing, and get it on one page. And have it available as a handout. When somebody comes up here to speak, and obviously hand them one of them, take that home and read it. So I think that's a neat idea. And have it, have it on the website, have it every place. Have it as, whatever. It would take some massaging to get enough of the details in there. I like Wes and his portal onto the website, where it'll be easy to get to, and to draw you to it. That's a good idea. That is good. The frequently asked questions and a contact thing. where that somebody can email, you can send an email, whatever, somewhere we respond to it for questions and all. That's a cool idea. I think that would work. But another one is the Owens Valley thing. I skimmed through it. I just, on my phone, stupid, I know, but it's where I had it. I skimmed through it, and there was something in there about those that don't have internet. Well, that's a big deal nowadays. There's people that don't. And how are we going to accommodate that? Don't know yet. That's another to be that we need to look into and decide on. And also point out that Owens Valley CE thing, professionally done by a university in Sacramento. That's what it said up on the first page. 37 pages worth, by the way. So yeah, it's. I wonder what they paid for that. But anyhow, I won't get into that. So, but I've heard some good things, and I like it. I think we're going in the right direction, and these can be put into strongly worded recommendations to the board. To make them move on stuff, and not just tie up Stetson with rewriting our communications plan. I don't want to do that. I don't want them to spend man hours and dollars to redo this thing when it sort of doesn't, or it could be done. However, let's not waste our money. Let's not waste board's money on doing that when we can give the recommendations and strongly worded recommendations to the board to get things done. So okay.
I agree with that 100%.
Renee, is there something you'd like to add on this topic?
I just want to say I agree with having a handouts explaining some things about the GA, the GSP, frequently asked questions, and then maybe do that handout or something similar that Nick has constructed regarding the costs. I think that would be another thing we could add to our methods of outreach, because that's not on there, having handouts, that are general for the public. And maybe we could have a subcommittee work on the handouts, writing them and then submitting them to the GA for approval.
Camille, do you have thoughts on this one?
I don't, other than I like the idea of expanding the website for easier use. However, the website, even as it is right now, is not utilized fully. Many times I know that we have submitted comments to the Groundwater Authority, and they disappear into the ether. I'm sure everybody reads them, but it never is put out to the public what the comments were. I know we're also not the only one that has happened to. So even without making the website easier and looking nicer, that sort of thing, the GA could utilize it a lot better for the dissemination of information.
Thank you. Ed?
Yeah, I have 2 points. First of all, I'm all for public outreach, but we don't agree with the numbers that we're outlining in some of this. We definitely know we're in overdraft, but how big a problem it is, I think, is subject to question. And the other thing I see out there is there's a good number, significant number of well owners, that some may be de minimis and some may not, but they're just ignoring the whole thing. They have their head in the sand, and I don't know how you reach them other than, strict enforcement. Somebody goes out and does a survey on, each property, and does it really look like it's de minimis, or is there all kinds of landscaping and water usage that no one knows?
David?
I was going to ask Don to go next because he hasn't gone yet.
Gotcha.
Don? I think you have to wait a couple seconds after you push it down at that table. I've had trouble with
It's
that.
just a touch thing, too, yeah, a light touch. It doesn't click.
There we go. Okay, there we go. Nothing to add. I mean, I started it off, and I just repeat again, I think that just giving a brief overview of the communication engagement plan from Owens Valley, maybe there's certainly some things we can steal with pride and include in ours. So I just encourage everybody to take a look at that, and maybe at our next meeting or before the next meeting, send some comments to you on things that we might be
I'm
able
going
to
to
include.
propose something in a minute. but
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, I'll turn the mic off.
Is there any other comment on this issue before I try to wrap the approach up?
Yes, I agree with Camille. There have been many written comments sent in or given in person, and they are not posted. And that needs to be addressed to the GA board. And it needs to be noted to the public that there are actually two websites. There's the GSP website as well as the IWVGA website. And if we do come up with a one-page document, I'm sure the water district would agree to have it available for their customers because they have always cooperated in that way.
West?
I have one last comment. I agree with your comment, Ed, that it really doesn't look good when you drive around and you see 2.5 acres with a private jungle on it. One comment I would like to make is I believe what you recommended of driving around, to a point that's happened, because I know for a fact that my neighbor who didn't have the biggest jungle was required to put a water meter on by the Groundwater Authority because of the amount of irrigation he obviously does. And that's resulted in a lot of firewood coming over the fence into my yard as he's taking care of it. So,
Well, that's what we want, conservation.
Okay, we've gotten some great input on this, and I echo what many of you said, that I agree with many of these points. There are some that overlap. There are some that prove food for thought, and there are some that are individual. And we've had some inputs on structural items that say to me, we ought to spend a little bit of time on updating it, not asking Stetson to. We ourselves can make a recommendation on items to change in it from the specifics that were mentioned, as well as, Don, your proposal to perhaps look at the good example of a professional, probably five-figure in community engagement plan that was produced up north by a university group, or at least it was probably volunteer labor, graduate school labor that produced that.
Probably something, because it has their name right on the very first page.
Yeah, so I think it's worth updating it, and I think there's great suggestions here that we should pursue altogether. And since we're waiting, hopefully at the next meeting, that we would get some of the Groundwater Authority directors' input and feedback on things that they would like to change. I would like to propose a subcommittee. It's been a while since we had a subcommittee, and the subcommittee would likely be composed of at least the three who have written submissions to this, as well as any others that would like to join it, to go off and to coalesce these ideas into what should be in or what they agree on collectively, how they should be massaged together or not, and how they would propose individual changes inside the C&E plan itself, and then the additional document that emphasizes these areas separately that might not go in the C&E plan, but would be the guts or meat of what we would recommend strongly to the GA that they take out. So do I have are the three writers volunteering?
Yes, so.
Yeah, I'd volunteer. I wasn't sure, Dave. I tracked everything you said. My focus as a participant, and this is what I'm volunteering for, is on very specific recommendations to the GA that hopefully this subcommittee would agree on. I'm not going to focus on the C&E. I want to go straight. This is what we recommend specifically. And in that regard, I would be happy to participate in that process.
Okay, but you could, a portion of that discussion would be, we like the change comments that you brought up at first, for example, that you proposed to the C&E plan itself.
I don't have particularly strong feelings about that. They're sensitive issues with me for the reason I mentioned. I think they're major issues. Not giving the public the numbers, not giving them the monthly financial statements creates a lot of mistrust. But if I understand, yeah, I'm not going to focus on those little piggy tails I suggested we be added. You could take them out. I don't care about that too much. I much more care about the ideas from West and Lyle and Judy and other things we've heard this evening that can be converted to concrete recommendations. That's what I would like to bring back if others share that that's where our emphasis is going to be.
I think they do, but there's also a need to do that other part of it.
Do that other part once again. Summarize that.
Structural pieces, the update, all the political changes, all the things that are wrong in the document now.
I'm not willing to participate in that part of it. Just not the best use of my time.
There's an alternative way to do that, to separate those two, perhaps, if we want to do it, and that's to have the individuals go through the document and bring individual inputs to what they would change in the document itself, and have the alternative is to have this group, the three that I proposed, plus any other volunteers, focus on the specific items that you and the three of you have talked about. So we can do it. I thought in that committee you could do both, or we could separate the two tasks.
I think you should separate the two tasks because I agree with Nick on that issue. I'm not willing to go through and nitpick the document. As far as changing the representatives, that's going to be a periodic thing. So maybe we should just put we're represented by assembly district and put whatever number it is and not the person's name, because next year there will be a state election, and so those people could change yet again.
The district may change next year. We may not be in District 23. That's the issue.
Understood. But that's an easy thing to change. You go in, and if it's not District 23, it's District 25. You put 25 instead of 23.
There's a number.
Or you just don't put numbers, and you just say we have 2 representatives from the state, 2 from Congress, 2 from the Senate.
There are other changes besides those that do need to be made. And what I was thinking when I proposed the committee was there are things in these 3 documents that I believe impact the plan that should change something in the plan. The website focus, for example, the social media focus and pieces are something that could be updated in the plan. And so I think, West, it was you that brought up that perhaps we should talk about these media issues first and see if there is a required adjustment to the plan. And I thought I was hearing a required adjustment to the plan.
Well, speaking for myself, I found the plan to be fairly generic, and probably if we looked at it from a generic sense, we'd find it covers everything I recommended, And so if the words aren't in there generically, I think it's more important to make the focus recommendation to the GA and just be sure that it's generally covered in the plan, rather than necessarily spending a whole lot of time. If it just falls right through the crack in the plan, maybe we add a bullet somewhere. But just be sure we're covered. It's meant to be a generic plan, and it has to be turned into action. And I'm thinking we're helping with the action. But we do have to get the nits and the picks right, I think, on who's representative and that kind of stuff. And
there are a few things that do need to be updated. What I propose then is that we split the task. We have your group, the three of you plus others that may volunteer for that group, focus on the message and how to deliver that message. And when you complete that, you may look at the plan and say, here's where we think the plan would benefit from being beefed up on this, but your primary focus would be on the message and the message to the Groundwater Authority and how they would convey it out to the public. And then if each of us would review would look at the document once again for the nits and picks or those things that we thought were omitted or the good things that could be taken from the professionally done Owens Valley document, if we would address the changes proposed that we might propose specifically to the GA board for the document itself. That could be done by individual input. So at the next meeting, we would be going over the meat of the message that we want to carry forward and how to deliver that. And then we would have the second piece, the structural update that would coincide with that. And we would have the third piece, perhaps, that might be the GA's experience in strengths and weaknesses of implementing it over the last 3 years and what their assessment is. So we'd have those three things to bring together at the next meeting and hopefully get a closure set of documents or document out of it. Does that sound like an approach that we would agree to? No enthusiasm. No objections, though.
No
so
objections.
With that, who else would like to join the gang of three?
Everybody looking at me.
Well, your name was brought up.
Yeah, I know it. Yeah, sure.
David, I have a comment. I tried to press the green button and it wasn't working. So I just want to confirm that one of the one task that you've assigned to the three would be to review the document and that you wanted to have them go over the meat of the message.
Yeah.
So are you expecting them to formulate a particular message that we want to push forward? Or is this more of a how the GA can push messages forward?
It's kind of a combination of both, as I heard it. It's the type of things that should be in a message, and, for example, the one-pager or the suggestion that West made about how to put that out there. It's the things to emphasize. And when they bring it back, the whole board the whole committee has to agree to this. We'll be voting on agreeing to it.
Right. And I can agree that we need to formulate something for the board to help them with messaging. However, if you're talking about the message that, say, Nick just proposed, I cannot agree with that specific message.
I expect that will be where the rubber meets the road next time, as to what we can agree on as a group and how we have to come back from specifics. But the method, I think as you referred to it, for example, the one-page method may be something we can agree on.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I would like to decouple those, the type of message and the content of the message.
Yeah,
Because, for instance, on a one-pager, there are a variety of topics that you could cover. One might be the history of Sigma, or the history of the basin, or something on that order, that you would just have one-page information for people who are interested in that particular information. Has the GA asked the PAC specifically to formulate a message for them on a particular topic?
yes, they have in the past, but not.
But not at this moment.
Yeah, but they gave us an open-ended task or they approved us to go ahead and look at the C&E plan and methods of communication and move forward with it. And in our PAC report out of the last meeting, we emphasized that from the discussion that we were going to take on some of the areas of focus, is how I would put it, like individual users, what it's going to mean to you, the impacts of it and the alternatives, that kind of message. So there are parts of, I guess in my mind, I see, and I know where your concern's coming from, for each individual cohort or group of stakeholders that we represent, there could be a statement made that gores our ox if we were focused simply on the message, but there may be a generic level of message that we do agree on, as well as this idea of format that meets West's general concepts and Nick's and Judy. So I think where we're going to see this is exactly what the group comes back with and what we can agree to or not. And we have, in some cases, we have had great agreement over the last 3 years that I've been chair on some things, and we've had others where we couldn't agree on that, and we had to take certain parts of the language out.
Yes, I would expect that to be the
Yes.
case.
And so that's why the next meeting may be a very lengthy discussion of a lot of work they're going to have work to do to focus this amongst themselves. There's 4 of them now, there may be more, to focus that themselves and then bring it back and convince the entire voting committee members that this is the direction we want and the message we want to send to the GA board.
Okay.
I have a question, David.
Yes.
With Pat's resignation, how many PAC members are there?
Let me go back and see if I can find my document.
There's 9.
I think it's 9 because I counted a majority in a quorum required as 5 for the meeting.
All right. So
Yep.
a committee can't be any more than 4.
Yep. We were going to have to decide who didn't want to be on it if we had another volunteer that was adamantly wanted to be on it. So would you like to chair that, West, since you spoke up first and you have perhaps the most comprehensive approach?
Sure, I'll be glad to do it. I'm a very empowering chair, don't worry.
Empowering. Okay, thank you.
You can have 4 or you can't have 4. Did I hear?
Can have 4,
There's
but no
There's
more.
9. No more than 4.
You
Okay.
can't get to a 5.
I can volunteer if you need me.
Yeah, no, you can't. Yeah, I knew that's where you were going. You can't have 5 because that's a Brown Act violation,
You got it.
which we have. There are some formalities we do have to abide by. So there are 2 tasks that this group signed up, that the committee just signed up for. The subcommittee itself, the 4-person subcommittee, is going to go off and merge these documents, massage them. They may have additional ideas that occur to them during this time. They will, and they're going to, once they're done with that, they're going to look back at the communication engagement plan and see, in line with that, are there changes or additions to the communication and engagement plan that they would recommend out of their group activity. Separately, each of us is going to review the C&E plan. note our nits and picks and additional changes or updates with the passage of time and technology that we see fit, and propose that. And our task at the next meeting will be to bring those two together with the third expectation that we may have some feedback from the GA themselves on their critique or recommendations with regards to changes to us, and our task will be at that meeting and subsequent to merge those and to reach agreement. And so I expect there will be actual votes, since we're going to be making formal recommendations either for a document or an approach methods or both. So that's what we have on the plate with regards to this subject next meeting.
Yeah, quick question. Camille raised the point that the message, the task one you outlined for the small group, is the message for the GA, and that would include some kind of a merging, if possible, of the various approaches we talked about. But then there was also the discussion of, do we want to take an attempt at providing that one-page message? Is that included in task one? That the more difficult thing, which did that end up included in task one as like a 1B? When you said two tasks, I thought you were going to say the approach to offer to the GA and then some wordsmithing of what the one-page message might be.
I interpreted it, and this is just what I thought I heard from the discussion, is you're going to say the types of things, for example, each water stakeholder user, you're going to say the type of things that you would put in it for them, not necessarily the things, the wording, et cetera, but the type of things that stakeholder user group would be concerned with and want to know.
Okay.
And then your task 1B was to, having looked at all this, are there any modifications you would make to the plan itself because of looking at that?
Okay, so task 1A is to merge our approaches to CNE, specific approaches, and as part of that, look at what messages we might expect each stakeholder to want to see.
Yes, okay. That's how, in my mind, I see it. Is that what everybody else agrees that we're taking on, or they're taking on for us to be adjudicated? Bad word. To be discussed and agreed upon at this meeting next month. Okay.
I think I got it.
And then we have the individual task to review the plan itself. Yep. Okay. Do we have public comment on this issue? Review of the communication and engagement plan. Any public comment, Gary? Thank you. Seeing none? No. Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot the in-person.
Of course. Okay. Why don't I just be noisy? I already said that I was, right?
You're doing fine.
Before this entire topic was brought up at your guys' last PAC meeting and then also the GA meeting, I read the GSP, and I think it was Nick who pointed out just how lengthy that document is. I'm not a scientist or highly educated in the general sense, and I found it difficult to get through it. It's extremely dry, but I made it through it, and I've done a series of videos on it, and while I may not always get it right, I try really, really hard. So with my generation, because unfortunately I'm an elder millennial, I'm over 30, with my grouping and then of course my daughter's grouping that are also coming up, we have to keep that in mind, that the way that we talk, the language that is used needs to not be legalese, which a lot of the GSP is definitely legalese. So you have to decipher a good portion of it. And Nick's idea is really great. Judy's is, quite frankly, better, in my opinion. The website currently is insanely difficult to navigate. And I'm a computer person. I'm on the computer every day, all day. I write a newsletter. I do college courses. I'm all over the internet all the time. And I find that website to be cumbersome constantly. When I'm looking for things like agenda items, or even documents that go to the GSP that are cited in the GSP as reference documents, you can't find them. So you have to go look somewhere completely different. And making those changes isn't, yes, it costs money. I know that. I run websites as well in my spare time. All of that stuff does cost money. Rewriting this entire plan is going to potentially cost money. Everything costs money. I don't think any of us disagree with that. But trying to tweak some of that language, excluding social media, YouTube, the news article thing's great, but a bunch of my generation no longer looks at the newspaper. We don't, because we can't necessarily trust it. That's become a source of discontent among my generation, at least. Where we get most of our news, as unfortunate as this might sound, is YouTube and short Facebook videos. YouTube has now added what's called shorts. They're 30 seconds to a minute long. They're very easy to do. Everybody knows about TikTok. I know everybody gets annoyed at TikTok because it's making people kind of dumb. But with all of these short little snippets, breaking the GSP down, that is one thing that I've found that has actually worked, just personally, because I hate misinformation just as much as all of you do. I very much do. I cannot stand it. And while I can't get everything right, I try very hard based on the information and the text in front of me, and by asking those questions like I mentioned earlier. So adding that to it, and then also advising the GA to actually add a media manager. Why they don't have one, especially with some of what's gone on in the public eye with misinformation, not just from public members, but board members as well, where we're getting mixed messages, and that becomes a really hard thing to kind of deal with when you're trying to decipher things. I forget who mentioned it. I guess Keith Lemieux made a boo-boo. It happens. We all make missteps when we communicate verbally or even in type. So having a media manager for the GA would probably solve a good portion of this, but that's just my opinion. But thank you, guys.
Thank you, Regina. Unfortunately, some of us up here, well, me, I'm an elder boomer, but I had a lot of your generation working for me, so I understand.
Good evening.
Another elder boomer.
Yeah, right. Elderly something.
He's a pre-boomer.
Ooh,
Excuse me.
zinger.
For the record, I'm Don Decker. I don't know about this boomer business. One thing that I've talked to Stetson about many times, the GSP website in particular, none of it's searchable. And it does make, in fact, it difficult to find especially older pieces of material. And the GA website isn't searchable either, of course. And a lot of the posted papers that should be there that aren't, even if they were there, you're going to have to dig to find them. And the organization, the file structure of both, especially the GA website, is primitive. I think that's one reason people have trouble with it. They're not used to seeing something that's quite so simple. But the searchability that's missing is a key thing to improving the ability of basically anyone to find specific information.
Thank you, Don. Any other public comment? Okay, with that, it's now time for item number 6, confirm the current TAC member representation. And if I can find my document.
Hi, Dave. This is April on the line. I was muted.
Hi, April. We don't
hi,
have your face,
hear...
so I didn't see your lips moving.
Yes, no, sorry. I did hear everyone's comments about the website, and I just wanted to chime in quick that, that was a baby that I kind of took over when I became the clerk. I understand everybody's concerns with how much information we have now at this point. That website is in the process of being reworked. So I just wanted to put that out there. So if anybody has ideas and they want to throw them my way, I'm more than happy to listen.
Thank you, April. Appreciate that. And I know you've got a lot on your plate with the change in management structure and all, and the restart of our group under different rules, and that's part of what happened this week with regards to getting it out. The bylaws had changed with regards to how we approved and approached this meeting. They were actually streamlined, but we didn't exercise the streamline of it due to miscommunication, so my apology. Okay, currently the TAC has openings for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 voting members and 3 non-voting members. Of those 12 openings, and you have the handout in front of you, only the one large ag is occupied, one for the Kern County Water Agency, one for the domestic well owners, and one for the district wholesaler and industrial users. So we have openings, one in large ag, one in small ag, 2 in business interests, 2 in residential customers of the Public Water Agency, and 1 for domestic well owners, and 1 for East Kern County Resource Conservation District. And we have 1 of the Bureau of Land Management is open pending a reassignment. And as we know, Tom Bukowskis for our committee, the PAC, is off on reassignment, and they will appoint someone soon. But we have a lot of openings on the TAC. And as we talked about last meeting, each PAC member represents a stakeholder group. And I listed what those were: large ag, small ag, and so on. They have the ability to nominate a member of the TAC, and we want to reestablish the TAC as a viable group. It is very important in the return to the efforts to implement the GSP, to do updates to the GSP, to take on any tasks that come out of the DWR's approval with comment or non-approval of it. It is very important that we have a viable TAC, and we had one. It was very well occupied by very experienced people who met all the criteria, which is listed in the bylaws for it. Technical education background, it's an experience in the basin or a similar basin. So given that, I would like to put the canvas out, and I will make this a part of the PAC report, that we are soliciting from the public qualified folks, and I will list those qualifications as written in the bylaws during the PAC report and the GA meeting, to approach each one of us in their areas that they represent stakeholders, so that we have the ability to look at them, and if we decide that they're qualified, to nominate them to the Groundwater Authority, who then will look at them and approve them or not, and appoint them, and we can get the viability of the TAC up and running beyond the 4 voting members. They only have 4 right now. We have 9. So I would like everybody to take that notification responsibility. I'm doing it at the Groundwater Authority meeting. I would like you, if you have a way to get out to interface with your stakeholders that you represent, that you solicit from amongst your membership someone who might be qualified, or solicit from folks you believe might have knowledge of people with this kind of background. I don't know who those are other than the water district, they're hydrogeologists, et cetera, not exclusively, but try to proactively recruit someone that you think is would be a good nominee and nominate to the committee, because it's important that we have that committee back operating.
I have a question and a comment. I guess I'll make my comment first. It's written. As you know, the TAC representative for the Eastern Kern County Resource Conservation District passed away just a little less than a year ago. And since that time, we have been pursuing someone to take his place. We had someone to take his place. However, this individual, he's highly qualified, but he has been very ill for the past couple of years, and he's gotten better, and I thought to myself, aha, we're going to have our representative on TAC, and he has told our board that he is moving. So we're back to square one for us. And as you all know, the Eastern Kern County Resource Conservation District represents all of the stakeholders that live in Kern County in the Indian Wells Valley. My question is, parties to both the TAC and the PAC were created shortly after the bylaws were created, and things have changed somewhat. And so here's my question. We have two seats for representatives of a public water agency. Tim Parker works for the Indian Wells Valley Water District, which is a public water agency. So do we really need two seats there?
He's not a voting member.
Well, okay, but getting qualified people to sit on the TAC is obviously very difficult. Getting them to stay is also very difficult. And I bring that up as a comment.
Don, can you, do you have a comment on that from the district?
Well, I've expressed before, and our legal counsel agrees that our customers are represented by Tim Parker as a tech representative for the water district. So I tend to agree with Judy that the representatives may disagree, but that's the water district's position.
The other question
is that, I would ask, without being a voting member, do they have adequate representation from Tim Parker?
In my opinion, yes.
Any other member comment? Don?
Don Decker again. As a TAC member, I can offer you some comments that may be useful. The three active TAC members, Tim Parker, Eddie Teasdale, and myself, have probably turned in, I don't know, certainly in excess of 90% of the reports that have been turned into Stetson. And the benefit of the larger group is in the public meeting and exchange of comments, ideas, and so on. As far as the actual heart of the whole thing, that is doing analyses and writing reports that provided guidance for the GSP, the core group is basically tiny. It still exists, and it's still functional. Nothing has changed. We're still writing reports just as we always were. We haven't met in public, but what that does is, it totally eliminates the public contact point, which you guys can pick up and carry on. One of the comments that I made to a meeting that we had, the three of us plus Steve Johnson just a couple of days ago, was that as far as providing a public forum, a lot of the comments and questions that people brought up at the microphone, public questions, were very similar for questions addressed to this committee and to the TAC itself. In other words, people didn't really distinguish the nature of the questions and who they were asking them to. So as far as the public ability to address a group, a GA representation, your committee is as valuable as any could be, is what I'm saying. And the TAC is still functional. But one of the problems that exists, and it exists for your group as well as the TAC, is this whole thing goes on for year after year after year after year, and everybody is getting older, and people have ideas about their retirement. They get sick, they die, and you know, it's the way it is. And if you look at your group here, there isn't a young person on it, and there certainly isn't anything on the TAC either. And the three of us have tried really hard, talking to our associates and friends. Judy and I know a huge number of people in this valley, having been here for 50 years. And most people that we know are either not interested in contributing to their civic duties, are not qualified, they don't know anything about the physics or the chemistry or the hydrology of the basin, and they're not prepared to basically contribute. And the ones that might basically are trending to say, no, don't have the time. So this task of recruitment for a voluntary position that can take up a huge amount of time is a demand that most people just can't and won't take. And we're up against it.
I appreciate your comments, Don, but and I appreciate having been at most of the TACs as well as the PACs when we were both meeting on the same day, that a lot of the input remains the same, as you say, from within the TAC. The main contributors, what you don't have now with a larger board is the sounding, is two things to my mind. The sounding board that the board provided to, or the committee members provided to each other, both in the board and perhaps in the exchange of email documents, et cetera. But perhaps more importantly is the stakeholder constituent visible representation to the public. That here is a some quasi-expert representing my interests, which each of us do at a policy level up here, and therefore we have a responsibility to be informed on this. And this has been one of the strengths in this Groundwater Authority, is both the TAC and the PAC committees. And I appreciate it's very difficult, and I applaud Regina for being here today. We don't see a lot of millennials. And even though you're a self-declared elder millennial, I applaud your interest in being involved. And we've got to find those folks if we can. It's going to be difficult, but if we can get two more, as many more as we can, and appeal to the public, be involved in your community. Unfortunately, these are volunteer positions. You don't get any money. You have to dedicate some time, both in these meetings and elsewhere. And you have to have a certain amount of thick skin and desire to help your community to do that. But we've got to go out and find those people if we can. We can't not do it.
I think, if I might respond to that, we all realize the benefits of having public involvement, and that means the public committees. I was simply expressing the realistic aspect to it. We're up against multiple issues that really don't have solutions. Many of the candidates that I have identified and talked with through the years were eminently qualified. They're dead. We all slowly slip away, and I'm on that path myself, and certain others are too.
I agree, Don. My only statement, and I really support what you're saying, is we need the involvement from community members that are qualified, and so we're actively appealing for those, and there is a large sense of satisfaction that can come with that. Personally, that's what you get out of it. You're being satisfied and taking on difficult tasks for your community and helping solve it. And Don's right. There are no good answers. It's difficult. Are you volunteering, Regina?
I have not experienced enough for that. I might be able to read and understand a good portion, but I do not have that level of technical knowledge. I defer to the experts for those things, which I ask questions. I'm sure Don has run into it. Judy's probably run into it. Most of you have. Even with, the PAC, trying to get my generation involved is like pulling teeth. Good luck. I am a unicorn in a lot of ways when it comes to my involvement in my community. Again, I live in Trona, but living in Trona is vastly unique compared to Ridgecrest. I have to be involved. I don't have a choice anymore. It's either I get involved or everything goes by the wayside and everything goes bye-bye. We lost our only committee out there that was our voice because we didn't have enough community involvement. We're still trying to gather members, so I can empathize with Dawn in trying to do that. One of the things, like I was saying before, when it came to the community engagement plan is utilizing social media to your advantage. Almost all of my generation will find a job on the Facebook. But it's weird. I personally won't because that's not my thing. But a lot of us do. We have, let's see here, there's my Trona newsletter page has well over 800 members on it. The Citizens for Unfair Treatment by the GA page has almost 1,000. The Trona, one of the Trona pages has I think they're almost at 2,000 members. Another page that has to do with the plant has over 6,000 members. It's not that we don't have engagement on social media. We do. Unfortunately, it's across multiple pages. So if you guys wouldn't mind, if you could make it easier to find the TAC qualifications, because I can't find them. Most of us in the community who are my age, there are others who are older than me that are, similar ages to y'all, who are also involved on social media. We can't find some of this information, and we want to put it out. It's not that we don't want to help you guys. It's not. We may disagree on a lot of things, and we might get a little nasty sometimes on social media, but that's just, over there, like keyboard warriors. Leave them alone. Don't ignore those. But those of us who take a risk and stand up in front of your committee or even the Groundwater Authority, we've been saying this whole time, especially the last year, we want to help. We want to have input. There's many that, maybe not a lot that are water people that are my age, but we have some. I'm sure the water district has a couple employees that are closer to my age, maybe not the 20s, but in their 30s, because I'm sure it requires a degree and that takes a while. So getting that information out, we have a radio station. It's not the greatest, but that's an option. Putting all this information together is not easy, but there are those of us in the community who are willing to help. All you guys got to do is literally ask. And a lot of people like myself will bend over backwards to help you. So that's my 2 cents.
Thanks, Regina. That's why I asked you when you came up if you were volunteering.
I wish I could.
No, but thank you very much. By the way, the qualifications are in the bylaws, Section 5 of the Groundwater Authority. And as I stated, I will be putting that language in the report and saying it publicly during the next GA meeting.
I had a comment, a couple comments. First of all, I don't know that TAC members necessarily represent their constituents. They are there to be technical experts, unbiased by what their constituents might be. And I want to really hand it to the hardcore that's still there. Eddie Teasdale, remarkable individual. I think he speaks for pure technical basis. Certainly Don Decker. And so my perception is that the TAC is still being very effective because of the close relationship those guys have with the technical efforts going on. And it's a resource. It's a huge resource that would really cost the taxpayers a lot if we had to pay for Eddie. Thank you. He's a good guy. And so I like his first name, too. Anyway, I think that so they are playing a very effective role, despite there just being a few, because they are so committed to the technical excellence and nothing else, in my mind. So just thought I'd throw that in.
Thank you, West. Any other public comment? Okay, with that, we'll close agenda item number 6. Number 7 is more of a notification of what's coming up next for us. A draft ordinance on temporary emergency water use and waiver. Do we want to bring that one forward for the next meeting or not? Do we want to continue to? I think we've got a lot on our plate with what we just said we were going to combine with regards to the communication and engagement plan at our next meeting. Perhaps what we could do is send out the latest version of that draft ordinance and be prepared to address it at the next meeting after that.
I have a comment, and it's in my written report. At the last meeting, I did bring up a POAM, and it was discussed, and the consensus of the members that were here at the last meeting was that this was something that was very important that this board need to discuss and see if they could come up with a direction and suggestions to give to the GA board on the financial situation and how to address it and explain it to not only the public but to themselves, I do believe. And I would like to see it put on the next agenda.
We are waiting a response. We delivered that message. We delivered the entire discussion on that topic to the GA board, and as I said earlier, they are in the process of putting something together for us to comment on.
Okay.
Depending if that's ready, it will be on the agenda to discuss if that meets the needs. But in fact, they heard us. The staff is working on it. And at one point during the discussion, I think when I was summing it up last meeting, I said we've had a discussion to the lengths of regarding the POA&M or a schedule in general that we're delivering the message of the discussion we've had and the importance and value of it to the public, the staff, and the committee. That in one sense, the purpose of that whole discussion was to get their attention and to get them to develop or make that public, and they are doing that. So our next task will be, as I said, if as anticipated they provide that, we'll have something to look at and comment on and move forward on this priority list at the next meeting.
Good, because again, I say that it was alarming to see on the GA board agenda that replenishment fee money was being spent on things other than water importation. And it's certainly an available pot of money that the board could take from unless they put it into a special fund to be used for imported water, which, as we all know, is extremely expensive. But using replenishment fee money for working on wastewater treatment is not appropriate in my book. And as far as the items you had for upcoming discussion, I believe that perhaps item 7A is something we should certainly be looking at. But I have some comments on the next two items, B and C. If you look at those items, they're enforcement items. Developing a policy on enforcement items, well, that's okay, except there is no staff to go out and do any enforcement. I would hope the GA board wouldn't expect April to go out to private well owners or mutual well owners and see how much water they're using and if it's too much. And the other issue there, of course, is that most private well owners do not have a meter. So they couldn't tell you whether they were using too much or not. So I think these two items are premature.
Well, there is a policy out on that, and item B was what we prioritized last time. Item C, we asked for clarification on, and we got it that those policy ordinances generally applied at the retail level from all the other agencies that we talked about having jurisdiction, and that perhaps the GA should consider some sort of policy that strongly encouraged conservation, wise water use at the water producer level, so it would be a reduced level from what this original proposal would be as we prioritized it. And that's further out in this discussion. At the best, we're going to get through the C&E plan next time and perhaps a look at a POAM.
All right.
Any other thoughts on future agenda items? This is just to keep in front of us what we prioritized. Public engagement on public comment? I'm sorry, Renee?
I just want to get the C&E plan, get that done, get one thing done at a time.
Yep.
So I think if we take on too many things at once, we're not going to accomplish anything.
Thank you, Renee.
I had a brief comment on I like the idea of us reviewing the progress towards the PONM. In particular, I noticed there was a discussion of software that might be purchased by by Carol Kiefer Thomas, that they were going to purchase software to do that job. And I think it is important that another requirement be clearly stated before you proceed with that. What are we expecting out of this? And I've discussed this with Nick sometimes. We have completely we come from two different angles, and they add up to a whole, I think. I think we need to be able to track the funding by task, and I don't see how you can track it by task if you don't have a POA&M that identifies those tasks and how they play together. And Nick he uses more financial management terms that I scarcely understand, but I think you could roll it up by task and end up with the upper level thing that Nick wants to see. So I think it's important that those inputs be made as they move forward to purchasing software and how they're going to approach this.
Thank you. Public comment?
I'm just going to annoy you guys all night. That's what's going to happen. With your guys' future agenda, I think it might have been Wes over there, who mentioned the financial stuff. I'm not sure why this GA actually doesn't have a finance committee. For the amount of money that they intake, we're talking millions, probably at some point billions of dollars. And as of right now, the guesstimate, if I understood the water stuff correctly, and I might misquote it, is well over $50 million for one of the projects. Just one. And the other one, which I believe was the LA water project that Inyo County hates so much, is...
AVEC.
Huh?
AVEC is the more expensive one.
AVEC's the one that's over $107 million. I do have some of the numbers still in my head, but I don't like them. When we're talking this level of money, I'm sure every last member, it was brought up 3 years ago, and I went through some of the old feeds looking for something, and I ran across, it was a public comment. It was actually asked for well over 3 years ago. It was asked for when the GA was initially established, before the PAC was even a thing yet, that a finance committee was put in place. before they started taking in all of this money. And while this committee, I'm sure, can advise on a lot of that, that is something with community engagement, and future agenda items to maybe take a look at, that they need to institute that now before this gets into lawsuit land with money. Not the water rights thing, but lawsuit land with money tends to be a little bit more stringent in this state. And unfortunately, government agencies do not generally come out on top in those. So, before getting, too far into this and collecting ostentatious amounts of money, that is not appropriately being tracked. And I do agree with Judy and Wes on some of that part, because I've seen it too. I've looked at their budget. Having that on your guys' agenda item, while it goes in with your engagement plan and isn't fully addressed, which I think Nick had brought up at the beginning. So that needs to kind of get stuck up there more towards the top, in my personal opinion, because it has been asked for at least the last 4 years. So,
Thank you.
You are absolutely correct. And the board member who continues to ask for a finance committee and financial accountability is sitting right there in the audience by my husband.
Any other public comment? Renee.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to make sure that the committee stays on the scope of what we're supposed to be covering and not constantly get dragged off on tangents, because it's not our job to tell the GA we need a finance committee. That's not the scope of our purpose. So I don't want to get into that discussion. Can we move this meeting, please?
Thank you, Renee. Okay. Having seen no more comments on item number 7, next regular meeting, I'll confirm item number 8 is October 28th, 5 p.m., and it will be a regular meeting. With that, we'll go to member comments, and I'll start on my right with Camille.
I believe I've said enough.
Well, comment.
I have nothing further either.
I look forward to working with the gang of 4.
I just have a question. I missed the very beginning of the meeting, so I wanted to know, did Keith Lemieux come up with the form to help with the minutes?
Not yet, but that's essentially the voting form, and I've got it handled.
Okay. And then what will we be discussing at the next meeting about maybe rescheduling the November and the December meetings?
Yeah, that would be the appropriate time to have that discussion, yes.
Okay.
Don? Patience.
Oh, here we go. No comment other than what I mentioned. I won't be at the October meeting.
Okay.
Other than that, no comment.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, the only reminder I will have is that I would like everybody to make an effort, as difficult as it is, to recruit and identify and motivate potential TAC members so that we have a more robust, I mean, it is robust and functioning, but by numbers and by representative perspective to bring to bring forward the technical issues that relate to their constituents most specifically, so that we can do that. That's one of our roles, is to nominate those folks for the stakeholders representations we have. So with that, I adjourn tonight's meeting. Thank you very much all, and we'll see you back in October.